So, Dr. Sandler,
Sir.
you can cure depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
I want you to
I just gave a little talk about what but I'm also a counselor.
Welcome back to Psychobabble. I hope you liked the last time discussion we had about guilt. And we talked about irrational guilt, when something never happened but the person is feeling guilty about their own feelings and thoughts or their memories about some things, right? That's what we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
But what if something bad did happen, right?
Yeah.
So that that you would call it a rational guilt, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are sometimes you're guilty about things which never happened. Sometimes you're guilty about things that actually did happen and you did do them. And so how do we deal with that?
Yeah. We talked last time about somebody who might feel guilty wishing that the abusive father would die.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
the kid didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Or the kid that says, I didn't stop my parents from alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't his job. But there are people who
Yes. And
have done things.
often it happens in the scenario of parents. So there are many different ways in which parents might hurt the children and later on realize that and then feel very bad about it.
You have an example?
And yeah, so like one person, she took a lot of abuse from her husband.
Physical abuse?
Physical. He would curse. He would criticize. He would put them down in front of the kids, in public, and humiliate her. And it's not that she had low self-esteem or something like that. She had a pretty good self-esteem too, but she stayed with him for 20 years because of the kids. Because
She thought it'd be good for the kids.
She wanted to give an intact family to her kids, and she thought that she would bear the sacrifice and be a good mother and give them a good childhood. And when they grew up, then she said that I'm not going to take this anymore, and she got rid of this guy. And but when did the guilt start? So the guilt starts when she sees that one of her child has married an abusive guy. And now she wonders that was that a mistake because I set a bad example. I was a bad role model, right? So that kind of a guilt where it becomes very confusing.
Right. So there was actual behavior on her part that could have hurt this child.
Yes.
Or led this kid into an abusive
Most likely
marriage.
it did,
Yeah.
because she was exactly experiencing the same thing which
Right.
her mom did.
Right. So we can't lead this person to the recognition that she did nothing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you do with this?
Well, in these situations, I don't know if there is a formal name, but usually I give this owner's manual technique, which I call myself. I tell them that kids don't come with an owner's manual. So
God knows they don't.
and every situation is different, every family is different, every kid is different, and parents often end up do hurting the child, but that's not their intention. So, like for that woman, she had to realize that at that time, when she was living with this guy, she was doing a very honorable thing in her own mind, which a lot of people would have said is very honorable, that you to put up so much abuse just for the sake of your child, But she didn't know that that's wrong. She didn't know that, right? So, and that takes a while, a lot of talking and having different for that idea to sink in, and sometimes it doesn't sink in.
So you're offering her some compassion.
Yes.
Saying, I see the good side of what you were trying to do. I understand it, and I don't condemn you.
Which I do. I do see the good side.
Right. We talk a lot in therapy when we're training young therapists. Say this has to be a non-judgmental stance.
It cannot be,
It's hard to always have that stance, but we try to be non-judgmental no matter what a person says, and sit back, Buddha-like, and say, all right, this is your life, and I accept it, and let's talk.
Yes.
So was she helped by this?
Yes, a lot, and then not only just realizing that, but then it was a whole complicated relationship she had with her daughter, that now she was trying to redeem herself by helping her daughter get out of that situation.
Yeah.
But the daughter had whatever psychological problems she was not getting out.
Yeah.
And so she would feel helpless. And so that, helping her through that trauma about her feelings about currently what is happening with the daughter, and that led to a lot of relief. It was not like it was, I didn't cure her, but it made her feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, the daughter is engaging in what we have talked about before, the repetition compulsion. Freud's great term, that sometimes people feel unconsciously compelled to repeat an old trauma. So she grew up with this abusive father, and she marries an abusive man.
Right.
It's very common.
Yeah.
What about the role of church? You were talking about that earlier before we got on camera.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's when I was working in an HIV clinic. And there were a lot of people who had been through severe drug use. So they would be taking heroin, morphine, alcohol, and being neglected of the child, knowingly, because they couldn't resist their urge to use the substance, and taking them to places where there were a lot of people drinking and drugging and just leaving the child there to fend for themselves. So those kind of things are really very hard, and because there was really something bad they did, and once they are out of that, then they look back. It's horrible for them.
Must be terrible guilt, yeah.
That's a very terrible guilt. But what I have seen is that there are two actually, not only two places where they get some relief. One is Alcoholics Anonymous, that group. So they go to that group and they talk. There's a camaraderie there. They hear other people's story. They realize they're not alone. And the other, what I saw there was the church, role of the church. So their life changes when they go into the church. They get an acceptance. They have this relationship with our forgiving Lord, and they start having some self-esteem, self-confidence, and their life changes. So sometimes that too heals. Yeah.
And to some extent, I think we serve the function of the Catholic priest, the father confessor.
Yes,
right?
like we talked last time.
Before,
right.
That a person comes in and says, I neglected my children in the search of drugs, and I did this. And we provide that acceptance. What I've also found useful is to invite the patient to have an imaginary conversation with the injured person, to say, all right, you have a 20-year-old son, you neglected him in your quest for heroin, and now he's got problems. What would you imagine saying to your son face to face? And often with much emotion, the patient apologizes profusely. And then I say, and what do you need to hear back from your son? And of course, what everybody wants is forgiveness, because we've all made mistakes, hopefully not to that magnitude, but we've all made mistakes. And that can be a very healing thing. I think as we're talking, I think what happens is the patient comes in with the idea, like, I've done bad things, and therefore I'm a bad person. I'm just a really bad, worthless individual. And at the end of a successful therapy or a successful interaction with church, the patient says, I did really bad things, but in my heart I'm still a good person. And I think that's the essence of this confession, forgiveness, interchange. Right? I've done bad things. And we've all done some bad things.
Yes, and that's what I was going to say. I have heard it a lot in the context of parenting. That a lot of people that I'm working with, and they look back and they were either too angry with the child, and the child, there's a problem with the child, and they feel bad about it. Sometimes, the child has a problem which has nothing to do with their parenting, that they had ADHD or something,
or autism.
Or autism, and they start taking the blame. So it's very easy for a parent to be blamed.
Well, parenting is an impossible job. Mother Nature designed us so that it takes the better part of 2 decades for this immature human to get mature, far more than any other species. And so we're supposed to be on the top of our game and be the perfect, compassionate parent every day for 20 years. Who can do that?
And I think that there isn't a perfect solution for that, because you can you can pick up books on parenting and self-help books and numerous of those. but still, there are a lot of situations that you don't know what to do, and it's a science in itself, which is.
Then you're always winging it.
Yes, yeah.
In terms of rational guilt and doing bad things, of course, I have never worked full-time at a VA hospital. But years ago, I did part of my residency at our VA here in Albany. And of course, then you hear horrible stories.
Yes.
And we brought in a couple of vets several times to talk to our medical students when I was teaching at Albany Med. And this one guy came several times and told a story being on duty in Iraq at a checkpoint. And a car is approaching at night, and they're giving signals to stop, slow down, and the car's not slowing down. So they figured this car is loaded with explosives, and they open fire. When it's all over, they go to the car carefully in the night. It was an Italian general coming, a guy on our side, and they had killed him and his staff. And this man had opened fire, and he felt terrible guilt. Have you treated veterans much?
Not much, yeah.
I didn't treat this particular guy, but I remember in residency meeting some veterans who had killed people, and it was the wrong people. And their guilt is so terrible, so terrible. But I think for these people, it's very challenging to get to the point to say, I took someone's life, an innocent life, but I'm still a good person, and I understand the circumstances of it. Very hard to get there. But that's where they have to get. And these vets that came to talk to our medical students, this one guy in particular would say, when we're looking at PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, he said it's the guilt that's the worst for many of the combat vets. Probably not so for kids who grow up in abusive homes. I don't know that the guilt is so bad, but for the veterans who have fired their weapons.
So there was another brief discussion about another aspect of guilt. And keep watching, and we'll keep coming up with good topics, and see you next time.
See you next time. Have a good week.
I just gave a little